written production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
So I'll send you an email. I hope to do it after this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey guys, what's up? We're going to get started. I wanted to welcome everyone who took the time to come. Are you thinking of running? No.
Oh, you're not? You just wanted to attend it just to see? Oh, okay.
Okay.
I thought you were going to be a candidate. Okay.
Well, and you might find out that you listen and maybe you will,
Yeah.
and that's okay. To start out, if you have a phone, if you can put it on silent mode during this session, and I'll try to remind you to turn it back on when we're all finished. And I'd like to start out with just some introductions. So let's start down here with Jenny, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of information about yourself.
I'm Denny Nichols. I was past president, secretary, and director. I was on the board for 4 years, 2006 to 2009, long time ago. I have a background in business and community service. I was, before we moved here, I was a member of the planning board in the county we were in, as well as active in local politics. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Am I on? Okay, I can tell I'm Jean Buck, and I was asked to fill in the board, and was an administrator, mostly science teacher in Denver Public Schools, at which time in Denver Public Schools anybody that was had a Type D administrative certificate went through conflict resolution training, and I brought my charts and my guides and type of things that I had benefited as a teacher in Denver Public Schools from formal training in conflict resolution, and found it to be really probably as useful here as it ever was in the schoolroom.
Thank you. My name is Dale Lair, and this is my second term on the board. I'm currently the RCSC president. My background is actually, my undergraduate was in physical therapy. I went on to get my MBA, so I worked a lot in healthcare administration for the first part of my career, and then I opened several businesses, all healthcare related. I've been on, I currently belong to 2 clubs, the Clay Club, or it's the Clay Corner, I should get that correct, and the Weaver Spinners, which I mostly do eating. So those are my 2 clubs that I'm really interested in. And why I ran for the board, I think that I was on the ad hoc committee for Grand Avenue, and at the time the ad hoc committee was to decide what clubs were going to be in there. And I was very surprised by the lack of data and actual facts in making decisions. And so that was the main reason I thought, you know, from a business background, and when you own your own business, you don't make any decisions unless you have solid facts and information behind you. So that is why I ran. And it's been very enjoyable. I've learned a ton of stuff, and I've enjoyed my time on the board.
My name is Sue Wilson, and this is my 5th year on the board. Dale and I started together, and I was also one into the data. I have served as president, I've served as treasurer and board director. I came from Illinois. I taught for 19 years, and then after getting my master's, I became an elementary principal for 15 years. Came to Sun City because I was sick of winter, and we stayed. I joined 2 clubs, artistic stained glass and ceramics, which I spend a lot of time, or as much time as I can. there, but the reason I ran for the board was because I was upset about an issue, but got on the board and found out, became part of the team.
Hi, my name is Don Shorjay. I was president of the RCSC in 2006, along when Denny was on that board. And then I was a board member 2007 and 2008. I have the distinction, I found out, of the last president of the board before we got Jan Eck. There was no general manager. So I went from a nice, placid retirement to working 60 hours a week as acting general manager of the corporation, which at that time was about $16 million per year and 430 employees. 2007 and 2008 were a little more realistic. My background is split. I had about half of my time, 20 years, in commercial and industrial construction in the city of Chicago, worked with most of the leading architects there. And then the second half of my career was in production and inventory management. That was another 20 some odd years. So that is where I come from, and I'm interested to hear in what you have to say as to why you would want to run for the board.
I don't have a microphone.
I don't need one. She doesn't want. Just introduce yourself.
I'm Marcia Johnson. I'm the corporate executive coordinator for the board of directors.
And she is the right-hand man for everyone that's on the board, so she's an important person. And then we have our cameraman and
Alan's over there.
Alan and Mike. Okay, I'd like to start with Bill. On the end, could you just kind of give us a little background, your name, background, why you're interested, current activities, interests that you are in?
Bill Pearson, bought in '99, moved here in 2003. Done a few things since I've been here. I won't list them, it's boring. Currently, I'm involved with the museum, the Del Webb Sun Cities Museum. And I guess if you call me anything that's a gadfly, I'm interested in Sun City, the way it's run, the values that were built in the community from Webb's the very beginning with John Meeker and that building sense of community. So spent 3 years on the board, don't really want to go back, but I may. Just events. Thanks.
Hi, Sherry Marshall. My husband and I moved here in 2018. We're third generation, actually in the same town. So that's kind of interesting. I'm in the Silver Club, and I'm also work with the Prides. I'm the Phase 2 coordinator, so I coordinate 105 people and getting them to their territories and filling those orange bags. I am in the Silver Club as well.
Which Silver Club?
Bell Silver Club, Bell Silver Club. I'm interested in self-governance. I'm interested in the way that Sun City was set up. And I really want to just find out more about that and make sure that the residents have the voice that they need. And so that's my current interest.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Mike Wendell. I moved here, I think it was 2018. It's coming up on 4 or 5 years, something, 3 years. It's more than 3. I'm currently on the board of SHOA, so I'm not sure if I'm going to really be a candidate and run for RCSC. You said you had to sign up to come to this meeting, so that's primarily what I did. I'm interested in knowing what the process is. I'm interested in knowing things about it. My background, career-wise, is primarily information technology, 40 years, all kinds of capacities, from extremely technical to management-oriented to sales and so forth. So that's why there.
Thank you.
You need to use that? Or
Yeah, sure. Could you
you can
please?
hear me? Okay. But do you want me to use it?
I think I can hear you with it. You're on it, it's coming across.
Okay. My name is Nancy Greathouse. We moved here in 2019, so we've only been here a few years. I've been in one club, which I'm not in currently. Decided not to go again after last year, but anyway, I am interested just in what the community is all about. I'm getting my feet on the ground as far as what's available and what I enjoy, etc. So I'm kind of like Mike, I guess. I don't know that I'm going to run for the board, but I wanted to find out a little bit more about how it operates. Everything, my background is basically business operations, distribution, project management.
Okay, thank you for coming. Oh,
I
didn't know you, but go ahead.
Came out here in Arizona in 1985. I moved out to Sun City in 2005. I moved out here before I retired because I knew this is where I wanted to retire. So I came out, found out about the community before I retired. When I taught school in New York for 10 years and I taught school out here for 22 years. When I came out here to Arizona, I did not go into teaching right away, so I didn't think I would want to. I started working at this facility where I was a recreational leader for special needs adults. And what I had to do was I had a van, I had to take them around and show them different places in Sun City, different sites around Phoenix, different sites around Phoenix. And it was really nice. At Christmas time, I got to take them around and look at all the lights, but gave me a chance to learn the city, so it was really nice. And then I decided that wasn't going anywhere, so I started working in the jail. So I worked at Madison Street Jail for about 6 years. And then I decided, well, I think I want to go back to teaching because I like having my nights and weekends off. So I went back into teaching and got my bachelor's degree in physical education. I got my master's degree in elementary education. But I thought I wanted to be an administrator, and I decided that wasn't for me because you're too far away from the kids. I like being with the kids. So then, while I was teaching, though, I was always putting me in charge of all the. I was a head physical education teacher for Glendale Elementary School District forever because they wanted somebody that was knowledgeable about the subject and knew how to run a meeting, knew how to control the meeting because I knew, as you can see, adults can get kind of crazy sometimes. And I was able to do that. So, and then when I wanted to run for the board out here, it was not because I thought that there was something wrong with the board. I wanted to help continue to make Sun City this wonderful place that it is. And I love living here. And there's a lot of things. I'm involved in 8 clubs. And most of the dance clubs, the aqua fitness, the players club, mahjong club. So I'm actually involved in 8 clubs. I'm very active in the community and I love being active because I don't want to just sit around. I need something to do to get me off the couch and away from the refrigerator. So I thought, get out here, get to know people and do things. So that's what I did.
Thank you. I'd like to now turn this over to you. And if you have questions, just raise your hand and, go ahead. We'll do our best to answer.
I just had one other comment. I came to Arizona in '79, so I've lived here a long time. Very familiar with the state and a lot of things. And I moved here when I came to Sun City here. I moved from Sun City Anthem at Merrill Ranch, which is down in Florence. And it's the newest iteration of Sun City that Del Webb is building. And I'm very happy being here. But I just wanted to make that point. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
So at this point, if you have any questions about what the process is, what the packet is, anything like that, or questions about what it's like to be on the board, how committee assignments get made, that sort of thing, go ahead and ask questions. And rather than me speaking, I would really like the panel members to. If you don't have any questions, then we're going to just start dumping information on you. But so, anybody have a question? Yes.
I'll start. One of the things I was wondering about is it states that there's 10 months that you need to be available. 10 months is one of the qualifications. So, but there doesn't appear to be anything where I see there's a definition of what does that mean, available. Is that available for 10 months times 30 days? Or does that mean that you are available for each and every board meeting, exchange meeting, committee meetings that you're assigned to? Can you define what that really means? Because I think it's a little vague to understand. People in Sun City are pretty much all retired or on their way to being retired. And I think it would help to understand what kind of time allotment you're being requested to.
Okay, that's a really good question. Would somebody like to field that question?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
I'm not a current member by any means, but I can share with you my experience. And that was that I was not a snowbird. I like to refer to them as a winter visitor. And I had moved to Arizona, and when I ran for the board and was on the board, and I was gone June, July, and August, although I was available for conference calls. And back then the technology wasn't what it is today as far as with Zoom and what have you. But, and I believe that it is part of the board policy now that you can have so many absences. Three? Okay. So it's, it worked well for me, and it seemed to work well for the rest of the board. Now, had everybody had my schedule? Maybe not. But as it worked out, we had plenty of coverage. I had a vice president that was very capable, and he did handle the meeting in June for me. So, that answer your question?
Yeah. Anybody would like to add a little more to that?
I think a lot of us are experimenting with Zoom. And I know I began to do this 2 years ago.
Right.
In Dale's committee 2 years ago, Zooming in on a meeting. I was in Colorado. That seemed to work satisfactorily. I don't know what the official stance is going to be. I don't think we've got one with regard to distance media, do we?
Not really. And I can tell you that, you know, sometimes things come up, and Ida, who was on this election committee, Iser, was on the board, and she had to miss a board meeting because of a funeral. So she was unfortunately out of town, but she wanted to participate, and there was something on the agenda for voting. So she called in, and I think Stella set it all up, and she was there on the phone. So typically, I mean, it's not like, my God, you have to physically be here, but, you know, if everybody is gone, the business doesn't get done. So there is some flexibility, you know, but it's not so hard and fast like you're talking 30 days or, no.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that. The problem, I think, comes that it is a black and white rule, and here, that these are the qualifications. And it states that you have to be available. Now, but there's no definition of available, and I think to leave it to an arbitrary decision of the board to say, I don't like what she says, or I don't think that that person is contributing appropriately, or they weren't here at the last meeting, or they zoomed in on this one, and we allowed that. I think to leave that open-ended like that is a dangerous situation to leave. I think it's too subject to a very small minority of people to make a decision based upon whether or not a person is available. I mean, you're correct. They're using a lot more technology now. You can phone in, you can Zoom, you can Skype, you can do a lot of things. So, I mean, I'm not here for about 2 months out of each year, but it's not all in monthly increments. 1 month I'm usually not here. The other month I am gone in weekly possible increments. So is that appropriate if there's no board meeting during those 2 weeks or that 1 week?
Yeah.
But you're saying that, but and don't take this wrong, you're here today, gone tomorrow. Okay, you have a limited time on the board. And I think that if you're stating qualifications, it's very important that people understand how hard and fast that qualification is.
Well, and we're trying to explain to you, and that's why it's really important to have a panel here, because it's not just me, it's people from that board, and that board, and that board. We also have a former board member here who's, you know, and basically I'm trying to say, you know, that it's not so hard and fast as you're making it sound. Nobody's going to... I missed a board meeting last year because my son got married. It happens.
I understand.
You know, it's not the be-all, end-all of the world.
Right,
you know?
I understand. I think there have been some, and that's probably why some of us are here today, is because we have seen some very hard and fast arbitrary decisions being made So it says that you can miss 3 meetings. So what does that mean? If you are down and you call in on a Zoom meeting, does that make your attendance there? If you come to a board meeting and you are there during the roll call, and so you are there and you have to leave early, does that constitute potentially being called out or subject to removal from the board? Those are the things that I think is where I see some problems.
Okay, and what I'm saying is that I think in my 5 years of being on the board, people are very flexible. They understand that you have a life. They understand that this is a voluntary position. You are not getting paid for this.
Right.
You have to put in a lot of time, and if there's something that comes up that you have to be in, and Bill's been on the board before, it's like it's not rigid, we're gonna cut you off at your knees because you didn't show up for this
Okay,
meeting. So I just want,
Yeah.
it's not so hard and fast that, so hopefully you got the message on that one.
Yeah, well, I hope that that's, is the way that it would be. That's what I would hope for.
Yeah.
I don't really want you to take it that lightly, though. I mean, it is a responsibility, because you do have committee meetings that you may be the chair or co-chair of that happen between board meetings. So it's not just 2 board meetings a month.
No.
I mean, my first year on the board, for 2 weeks out of the month, I was here almost every day. And because I had to be part of the meeting, the co-chair or chair of the meeting, and then the board meeting. So, I mean, when you run for this position, I think you need to take it seriously, because yes, you need to be available, which means they need to be able to contact with you. And everybody's talking about with this Zoom stuff, but I'm not really sure that the technology is that reliable around here to really rely on that, because when you take care of business, you got to have a quorum. So you got to have 6 people there. So you got to be careful about taking it too lightly.
Yeah, I think the only fear about, you can't have a board meeting. We could not have a board meeting via Zoom, because it's against Robert's Rules of Order, and we don't have anything in our bylaws that would allow that. So, we'd either have to, when we have to follow Robert's Rules of Order, so we would have to change the bylaws to maybe make that permissible. But again, I look at it as it's important for us to be there to answer questions of members. And so, you can't take the Zoom thing, but for your question, if you had to be gone and you can work it around your schedule, it's not a problem. So not to worry. Okay, any other questions? Mike?
This is more for current board members.
Well, this is about, now, before you ask.
Don turned me off right away when he stood there and said 60 hours a week. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. No, I understand. But that was, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago at least, So I look at that and say, it was a different thing back then. I'm curious about more today, and that comes down to the commitment of time that's typical relative to the committees you chair and the duties you take, as to how much time a week is typically given and put in. That's a current, more current.
That's a great question.
Because there have been some interesting issues in the last year.
Let's start down with Jenny. When you were on the board, on average, how much time did you spend a week?
It varied.
Yeah. Give us,
And,
Well, a month,
it's safe to say that it is a commitment. It's probably maybe in the neighborhood on an average of 20 hours or something like that a month. It all depends upon the committee. Some committees take a lot more time than other committees. Some of it in preparation, some of it in some committees, like I said, are very simple too. So, I mean, it depends upon, it's kind of like taking a bite of an apple. You kind of decide how big a bite you want to take. And it's part of your personality as far as what you decide you want to take on.
how about you, Jean? When you were on the,
I guess my answer would be a little bit different. I think I would advise people that if you're going to do this, to expect it's going to be a lot of work. Since I've been off the board, I've been on committees continuously. Thinking back, I'm sitting here listening to Denny, and I'm trying to think back if I've been to a committee meeting in 10 years that hasn't had at least one board member sitting in, listening. I know Sue's almost always there. Darla's almost always in any of our meetings. They don't run the committee. They don't have to be there, but they come for interest and for completeness of knowledge. So if you want to have a complete picture of what's going on, I think I would advise you that you'll be a lot happier if you expect that it's a lot of work. That's my answer.
Okay, I would reiterate that. And I think from my experience on the board, my first year probably was the easiest because I didn't have big committees to be in charge of. But the long-range planning took a phenomenal amount of time. And I would say the last 2 years, it was easily 30 hours a week doing my committee work and my work on the board. And this year, I would say as president, I'm probably right there again. So it's a fairly substantial commitment.
30 hours a week or a month?
A week.
I would agree with that. And as treasurer, I spent 3 years as treasurer. That meant coming in and signing checks. The first couple of years, it was every week. And you're talking 2 to 3 hours just doing that. But then as president, yes, it was a lot more time. And yeah, I would say 30 to even possibly more because I did attend all committee meetings. And so yeah, it is a lot of time.
I didn't want to frighten you with my war story. That was 1 year only. But in 2007, 2008, you pick up committees. You're going to have to volunteer as a board member to chair or co-chair certain committees. And in my case, I chaired the insurance committee. That meant we had to sit down with our current insurance policy and go over it tooth and nail with people who had experience in the insurance industry. And I really gained an education as to the ins and outs of that. Then I was also chair of the bowling committee, and there was a bowling manager. I don't know if he's still there or not. But yeah. Anyway, that was a lot easier because he had things pretty much in order, and we could get through a meeting quickly with the bowling committee. It depends, as I think Denny had said, what committees you have, but you will be expected to chair or participate in certain committees.
Okay, does that give you a pretty good idea?
Well, part of my thing with current is now we have very open meetings. We have and last year they ran long. That doesn't bother me so much. But back when I think the other three people here were there were closed board meetings.
That's correct.
As far as I understand it. So it's a whole different ballgame. You sit down, you're just with your peer board members doing the things you need. I'm not saying you don't get input from anywhere, but the meetings themselves were done in a very different vein of we're together. There was and I'm sure there was the formality of voting and all that kind of stuff. So
you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We conducted those meetings and they are legal. We do not accept federal funds, therefore we're not consulted to anyone. But what I'm getting at is in a closed meeting, you can have differing views and people can express those views in private, and you can arrive at consensus. That's why I don't think that some of these, what do you call them, the computer meetings, I don't think that that'll ever replace people sitting down and talking together. And it allows you to do this. Many people that, like I say, sometimes you're damned because you sit down, you get up there and vote on a subject, and you had agreement. Well, we had reached consensus. But to the people that were sitting out there, it was an evil cabal. We had come up with some decision, and they didn't agree with it. So now we have the open meetings, and they have a definite advantage of the openness. It's much more open. But by the same token, what you've lost is the ability to reach consensus privately, where people can express what they really feel and come up with a viable solution.
I would agree with that, and that's why I asked the question to something, because there has been a change, and now you can't even meet privately a little bit.
Yeah.
There's all this, there's this vein, because you do have to have some meetings, you have to discuss things, but the discussion and the reasons why it's important that I think it be out in the open. You know, in the open meeting, not just, oh, well, we came, we already made the decision, now we're just going to formalize it by sitting up here and voting on it. And the member board exchanges is an improvement coming back, because when I came here originally, they did have some of the exchanges. I came, they were about as well attended as this is today. In most of the cases I went to several. And I just said, okay, it's fine. So the board's sitting there, and there's some people sitting around at tables and whatnot, and you have your coffee, and you know, it could be a bitch session, it could be a number of things. It could be valid complaints and whatever. I've always had a thing about communication. In fact, my first involvement was on the communications committee. Dale was chairing it. It's gone. That bothers me. It really bothers me. And it bothered me a lot because the In Focus committee, you know, kind of morphed into information through technology, which I think was just BS. Then it went into In Focus. I think In Focus is a great thing, but it's one-way communication. They're doing a great job. I went back to one of their meetings. I think they run it very well. I think they put a lot of effort in, and their videos, I think, have been very good. But it doesn't replace the lost communications committee, because there are other things. So, but I'm just coming back, because that's part of why I'm asking this question. And so I am curious as to how committee chairs are chosen. How many committees does someone typically sit on as a chair or a co-chair?
Okay, that's a good question.
So it leads into that, because that is obviously effort, and all the committees vary a little, because some of them you have for bowling, for golf, for certain things. You have a management, someone from the management team would come. When I was on the communications committee, nobody from management came. You know, once, I think, in over a year and a half.
Let me answer the question.
I just want to come back to the committees.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
a
so
major
how
commitment beyond sitting up at a board meeting.
Exactly. So how are committees select? Okay, I'm going to tell you, as the president, I'm going to tell you how I did it. When you are elected, you will get a form, and it says on there, what committees would you have interest in being on? Okay, so everybody turns their sheets in, and then the president has to make committee assignments. What I did is, and the board approves it. What I like to look at is, what is the person interested in? That's nice. I want to look at their background. If I know that I have somebody who's really stellar in technology, but somebody who really isn't, but who am I going to put down for chair? I'm putting a person that I think has the strengths in that area. So there's your interest and desire to be on certain committees, and I feel if the committee's going to be successful, it's nice if you have someone who has a passion or has some experience or has the skill set to work in that particular area. Then I think everything goes forward. I'm a much more analytical person than I am an effective communicator. So communication was hard for me. Long-range planning that's my bailiwick. So that's how I did it. But if anybody else would like to comment, any other presidents that were former presidents?
I think I've said what I intended to, and you make reference of that fact that we must have open meetings, and you feel that's a detriment that you would like to
I'm not saying it's a detriment. It's not a detriment. I'm saying, I'll say last year Robert's Rules of Order was used as a weapon, I think, against people that attended the meetings initially. And that caused a bit of an outrage because it would come up and say, Robert's rules, you can't do this, that. Then all of a sudden we want to make Robert's rules optional. You kind of put people on a defensive point, and it's in there. Now you're going to the extreme of, well, everything has to follow Robert's rules. And it does, but it fills in the gaps, and it doesn't mean there can't be certain flexibility and other things, but it comes down to reasonableness. And that's part of where I see the pendulum is still swinging a little bit going. So I'm concerned about that if I join the board. If I decide to run for the board and get elected, that's a concern to me because it comes down to common sense and reasonableness in a community like this. And yes, we got to abide by rules and everything else. And there's a lot to be discussed that goes beyond just sitting at a member board exchange or at a board meeting, you know, coming up with a few things of what can be put on an agenda, what a board member. So maybe my follow-up question is how does a board member introduce a motion on the agenda for a meeting? I mean...
Yeah. First, addressing your committee question that you had. I currently serve as chair of the bowling committee, chair of the COC committee. I am co-chair with Dale on the election committee. I'm also on the investment committee, and I'm also the chair of the insurance committee. Those were my areas. I'm sorry.
Foundation.
And the foundation. I'm president of the foundation. Thank you. I did forget that. But those are the committees that I have served on since I've been on the board for quite a bit. As far as when you're talking the Roberts rules, actually the board attempted to change to say may so that there was some flexibility, but it was met very strongly from our members saying that they were against that they wanted it to be definitely you follow it. So that's why we follow it.
I don't want to debate.
Okay, well, let's give other people an opportunity to ask questions.
Can I add something real quick? Not only do we have the board meetings and the committee meetings, you also have liaisons that you are need to go to their meetings also, and that's usually once a month.
Yes. Sometimes twice.
Sometimes twice.
Yeah.
How are those assigned?
The same way as they are assigned the same way. So if you have an interest, let's say in the posse, you know, you have some experience in law enforcement, or you're interested, you put that down. Generally what I did is for new people coming on the board, I tried not to give them chair positions if possible. I did have two people who were on the long range planning committee, so they knew kind of the background. I, made them, and they were both new people. I made them chair and co-chair. But generally, I try not to do that, so that you get kind of a feel for how it works, and you can kind of learn the ropes before you have to do it on your own. Okay. Any other questions regarding the process? Okay.
I do have another question.
Oh,
I'm
good.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I do. Again, this is on requirements or qualifications.
Okay.
It states in there, and I didn't understand that because I've never seen anybody set up a bar yet for us, a cocktail hour. So what is the Arizona licensure as far as the liquor license that you have to, I think it states you have to be able to hold an Arizona liquor license. I don't understand what that, I know what it entails because I printed it off so that I would know, but my concern is what does that, I don't want to apply for an Arizona liquor license with my name on it. So is that automatically a disqualification is what I'm asking.
Okay, anybody like to field that question?
Well, one of the things that the board has done is try to prevent convicted felons or previous felons from applying and serving on the board. And I think because there is liquor that is served at there's a beer at the bowling alleys and so forth, because of that, if you are a board member, you have to be registered. You will be fingerprinted by the Maricopa County Sheriffs, and I'll run those fingerprints against the list they have of people who are have been convicted of a felony, and you would be ineligible then to serve on the board. if you come back clean, then there is no problem.
So, anybody else would like to come? Additional information on that?
Well, I have also done some research. And first of all, the corporation holds a liquor license for the benefit of the members. If you ever wanted to cause a riot in Sun City, take away beer from the golfers. And maybe the bowlers too, I'm not sure. But it only requires, I think, 3 or 4 members of the board to be eligible, and they have to be officers.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's not a big deal. I went through it.
Well, I understand, but some people have an aversion to drinking at all, or having their name assigned to an Arizona liquor license.
Well,
That's why I'm questioning what the reason is.
Keep in mind that as a member of the board, you are representing the community, and in representing the community, I don't think you can take individual single issues, if you will, and let it force it on everyone else.
But that's what you're doing by saying you have to be able to apply for an Arizona liquor
Corporation has
license.
to have, we have to have 3.
The officers.
And
Officers
the
only.
way we do it right now, I will tell you that all the officers go through the process.
Officers.
And that's it.
Officers, not directors,
But you never
officers.
know who's going to be an officer,
Yeah.
and if somebody quits, so.
And life happens, you know, you could get killed in it, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right, I understand.
So we
Understand.
make it a requirement for everyone, but not that if you, let's say you ran and you got on the board, and you didn't want to go through the fingerprint process and all that, I guess I just don't run for an officer position.
No, I'm not adverse at all to having fingerprinting. I've been fingerprinted in my
Okay,
past
well, that's
work.
but that's what it's about.
So, okay, so why does it not say that instead of saying you have to apply in order to be eligible to hold and know if you're eligible to hold, you have to apply for an Arizona liquor
That's
license.
currently what our bylaws say.
Yeah,
Right.
just
We're
repeating what the
following
bylaws.
our bylaws.
I know, but the bylaws were made by a group on a board, whereas I understand the other part about we don't want felons on there, of course not.
Well,
And that can certainly be taken care of without saying you have to apply for an Arizona liquor license. I
but we
think
have
this is
to
almost
apply-
like we,
Right now, we're giving you information, it's not to debate bylaws, because there's no changing the bylaws in this room. So, right now, these are our current bylaws, and that's what we have to follow.
I understand, but I'm trying to understand why is this part of that? Because it doesn't seem to really pertain to.
Okay,
me, I
this
think-
session here, we're getting off topic.
I think really the bottom line is that everybody should be able to apply or be eligible for a liquor license. Just in case you're needed somewhere down the line, you have to fill in for an officer or something like that, you have to be eligible. So just to keep everything straight and keep all the records straight, then we can make sure everybody is on the same level. And that's pretty much all that is. So it's just making sure that in case you're needed somewhere along the line, they don't have to say, oh, you can't do it because you didn't do this, or you can't do this. Everybody is eligible and you can pick anybody at any time you need it. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, any other questions regarding?
Yeah, I'm confused before you move on.
All right.
I just heard you say 3 people have to apply for it. When I was on the board, I never was fingerprinted or had to apply for it, nor was I an officer. That was
Were
by
you not
design.
an officer? Were you an officer? That's why.
That's why.
Well, that's my point. I just heard Darla say something else, that everybody should do it. Everybody doesn't. The 3 officers, so we're clear, because this is
Oh,
going to
yes,
be you.
absolutely. But
The
here's
3 officers, if you get elected to the board, you won't be fingerprinted. 4 is a...
We do
thank
4,
you.
but it only
Okay.
requires 3.
Right, but 3 will actually apply for them.
No, 4.
4, okay.
So
So
if-
4, just so people understand when they watch this, 4 people from the board will be required to be fingerprinted and
Correct.
be tested.
Correct.
The other 5 don't have to go through that
Exactly.
process.
Unless they become an officer.
Exactly. And you can refuse, because you guys elect your own officers.
Yes.
Correct.
And if a board member said, I don't want to be an officer,
problem.
they won't be an officer. So it's not an issue, so we're clear.
Yes,
But
I don't think
I
it
don't
is.
want to see people not run for the board simply because they don't want to go through the process, because there is a mechanism or a means not to be fingerprinted and become,
Yeah.
have to apply.
But if you're nervous about the process, there is nothing to this. There is nothing to this. She makes it so easy for us. Marcia's got everything taken care of. You come in, I mean, it's not a big deal, but that's the way, and I think every time you put rules down, you have a fairly large corporation like this. I mean, if Sue and I decide we're going to go somewhere and we get killed in a car accident, hello, we need someone to step up and be, and that's kind of why it is. That's why we have the board. So,
I totally understand, and believe me, I'm not adverse to doing that. I can qualify for it, Arizona liquor license or whatever. I just didn't understand
And the rationale behind
reason
it.
for it.
Okay.
Yes, to understand that. And I appreciate Bill saying that all directors do not have to be
Correct.
Going through that process. And I think that's where, we talked before about black and white issues. It'd be nice to have a little more understanding of that.
Well, that's why we
not
do these
have to do that.
information sessions.
Right, but there's only this many, and these went out to everybody, and it was talked about in the, and it was posted. So people look at that and they say, well, I don't want to have an Arizona liquor license in my name. Or I don't want to do that, for whatever reason. I think that's okay, because they could still belong and be a board director and contribute if they knew that that was not an absolute that has to be done. I just think we narrow that pool by not making that as clear as possible.
You need to make sure that people know that you have to be eligible because in case you've already elected as officer. So that is why that is posted and it's also in the bylaws.
Okay, any other questions about, yes?
How does the board interact with RCSC management? What's the formal process that takes place in terms of?
Let's step down. Sue, why don't you take that?
Our only employee for the board is our general manager. So the person we talk to is our general manager. If we wanted to talk to, say, our director of operations, we first talk to our general manager to see if they're okay with us doing that. Because all of those other employees are, in this case, under Bill. They're not under us. Bill is our only employee.
Is there a formal process where you meet with Bill, or how you interact with Bill? That's what I'm coming
Well,
back to.
Bill is very open. He has an open door policy. He, does attend a fair amount of the committee meetings. He's, if his office door is open, the only time he closes it, if he's, on the phone with an attorney, or if there's some, issues that they're dealing with upper management. Otherwise, his door is open, you can knock on his door. Any board member can, have access at any time. We have his email, he's very responsive to email, so it's not an issue. It's never been an issue for me.
Jan was the same.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? We talk a lot about the bylaws and stuff, but we didn't really talk a lot about the election process. So I'm going to just take a minute here. If you're interested in running for the board, we have packets made out, and I have a sample packet here, but bottom line is you have to fill out a little sheet. It gives you name, address, reasons for running, hobbies, interests, that sort of thing. And then everything you're going to need for running for the board is in this packet. And it will have like the documents, locations and all the kinds of, a resume sheet, your candidate goals, what you want. A lot of that's going to be used in marketing, and press releases when you're running. You have to sign a conflict of interest declaration. And then your papers, that you need 100 signatures. Everything's on here, what you need to do to get those 100 signatures. They have to be members in good standing, and members, not privileged card holders. And this is not a difficult process, but I generally would tell you, if you're gonna do this, probably get 120 or 130 signatures. It's not hard to do. I did mine during COVID with little or no difficulty. And I say to get a little bit more than the 100, because if somebody's behind in their fees or whatever, or somebody says, oh yes, I'm a member, but they're really a privilege card member, it might drop off and you don't want to be short, 1 or 2 signatures. So just to pad it a little bit to make sure that it's good for you. And then everything for the whole process is also in here. Fumbling papers, right? But everything for the whole process is in here, along with samples of like last year's candidates, because we'll do these informational papers so that at board meetings, a member board exchange, we have this out, gets put in the Sun Views, and just kind of gives information on people, who are running. And let's see, what else do we have in here?
There's a calendar of all the events.
And the calendar, yeah, these are the really important things. So it kind of gives you a heads up. If you decide you want to think about it over the summer, you can still pick up a packet in September. It's not a problem. We just have to have the packets in by October the 7th. So it'll tell you right here what's going to happen when the candidate orientation, which is that's a mandatory thing. The videos, we do the videos now, which I think are really nice, and you can use information. We'll help you if you're a little nervous about it. We can help you practice, so that your video is nice and professional. And then we have the 2 forums, online voting, we have absentee voting, and then the election day and what the election process is like. We talked a little earlier about committees, and this is a form on here. So as you're, getting your signatures and you're thinking about running in the fall, I would strongly suggest that, if you've got an interest in certain committees, you should go to those committees, sit in those committees, find out what it is that you like, you don't like. Oh, I'm really interested in this, get your information, and then when you are elected, you kind of have a good idea of what committees and liaison positions you would like to be on. So that's really important. And like I said, everything is in here. Marcia's information and her phone number and how to contact her are in here, and she is kind of our frontline person. Sue and I, as chair and co-chair of the elections committee, will contact you each and every month just to see if you have any questions, if you had any problems. Once you actually start the process, all of a sudden it's like, hey, what about this? I don't understand. No problems. I will give you my contact information. You can contact me at any time, but I will be checking in on you every month to see how you're doing, if you had any questions. And that goes on all the way through the election process. So, I'm not saying we're holding your hands, but we're helping you. Yes.
On that, I think you said that October
7th.
7th? Okay. So October 7th, we turn that packet in. That includes all the signatures?
If you took out a packet today,
yes,
you could probably get your signatures by the end of the week and turn it in.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yes.
Since they have to be validated.
Yeah.
They don't turn it in until the 7th?
No. You can turn it in any time. And yes, everything is validated. But if you've got your 100 in,
right,
you're good to go.
Okay. If somebody did turn it in, is there do you call them and say, hey, you've got 3 people on here that aren't valid?
Or I wouldn't tell you they weren't valid. I would just call you and tell you what your final number of valid ones was.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you know that you had enough and how many you had.
Okay.
And I think it's a good idea to turn them in early, because let's say you only got 110 and she says, well, you're 1 short.
Exactly, yeah.
No problem.
That's what I was kind of back and trying to back that up a little bit to at least a couple weeks, I think, to be able to be confirmed. Okay.
Good question.
Okay, and then also, the other question is, how many total members is the board representing? I mean, the board of directors.
We always look at the last, as of July 1st, the number of members in good standing, and I think, I'm close, but I'm not totally accurate. It's like 32,620 something. That's how many members as of July 1st. And this July 1st, it will change. It will go up a little bit, down a little bit,
right.
you know.
So that number is all members, or is that only members in good standing?
Members in good standing.
So, do you know
Voting members.
Do you know how many we have as a total member? I mean, there's only so many houses, so, I mean, is there a total?
But that's the number. That is the number we
But
go by.
that's gonna flex all the time, isn't it?
It does, it fluctuates. That's why we always do it as of July 1st. So
Okay.
whatever that number is, July 1st, that's what we use for everything.
Okay, so that list is what you will use to validate the signatures in October?
Correct.
Not somebody who didn't pay for the month of September then?
Well, I don't know how that works.
They look at our tag, our system.
Right.
They'll go through that sheet and they'll verify each person by looking in the system to see if they're current at the time they're checking it.
Okay.
Or if they're a privilege card holder, or if,
Okay.
whatever.
So we're using a rolling,
We're using a current as it is right now today.
Yeah.
So each
That's
time
why-
they do it, it will be as it is current when we start to review yours.
That's why Dale recommends that you get more.
Yeah, get 120.
Right.
I've never had a problem.
Yeah.
Got 120,
Okay.
it's good to go. But if you turn it in early, that's a nice thing. And we did have one board member, this was before I was on the board, but Ida, who decided on the morning of October 7th that she was gonna run for the board. She got 100 signatures in, it got in by the end of close of business, and it was fine.
By noon.
By noon.
okay, thank you.
So it's not difficult, the signatures are not difficult. Yes?
Changing subjects just a little bit. There's many issues and things that you guys deal with, and wondering what kind of training or educational opportunities you're given so that you're up to speed to meet all the fiduciary responsibilities. And I mean, coming from education, you might not necessarily know about, numbers, that kind of thing. So how do you get all of the board members up to speed?
You have the board candidate meeting first, which is mandatory. They'll give you information about how to run. But then after, if you are elected, there is a meeting, an orientation for the board. And that is the time when the general manager and Marcia sit down and they go through.
And Heidi.
And Heidi,
Corporate
yes, her
attorney comes in to,
And how long is that meeting?
as long as it takes.
Could be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it, 3 hours of education?
Well, that's the big stuff. Now, generally, if
You have questions.
if I were on the, board members are very willing to help other board members. And generally, if you have questions, it's like you will get a list of all the phone numbers of everybody. And I would strongly suggest and even during the process of running, set up a time to meet with any board member, many board members, and find out, you're not expected to know everything about everything.
No.
I mean, I know enough to, I'm not an insurance person.
I guess I would have thought there would have been more.
It has been described, getting on the board is like changing a tire on a moving car.
Yeah, you have to get hit the ground running.
So it does take a while.
We're there to help you.
Did I say, I know when I joined the board, I took responsibility to read the policy and read the articles myself. So I kind of educated myself on a lot of the policies and stuff. And then just listening through conversation, I've learned how things run and how people do things. But that's why I go to all the committee meetings, because I wanted to be familiar. I wanted to hear firsthand exactly how things run and what's going on. And you hear by word of mouth, just by talking to people through conversation. This is how you learn. And the first year of the board is really a learning experience, because you learn a lot by the time your first year.
Yes.
That's partly the purpose too of your advisory committee meetings, because generally you end up with people with financial abilities and knowledge on the finance committee. People with abilities and knowledge, probably past yours, definitely past mine, on the technology committee. So those committees are set up to be your education into your position. The people who run for board in Sun City are not professionally trained city managers with master's degrees in management. That's not the way Sun City is set up. And that's the role of your advisory committees, They're specialty committees and they attract people with specialty knowledge and they're there for you.
And the committees are really the way that members have input, you know, especially in their area of expertise, which is really nice, because if you don't have a lot of experience in a certain area, generally there's somebody in Sun City who's probably very adept. I mean, I look at the people on the technology committee and they're way over my head. So, any other questions about the election process itself? Yes, Mike.
There was some information you mentioned in the packet that I'd be interested in seeing, but I don't want to make a commitment at this point in time. And I don't know if I have to, if I'm making some kind of
Well, I have a packet here. You can
say I want a packet. I'm just
You can
wondering.
pick one up.
What?
You can go downstairs and we'll take a picture of your driver's license and your member card. We will have you fill out that blue sheet and you can take a packet. Even if you don't run, you can take one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be sure.
You're more than welcome to. Yeah.
Because I'm interested in what the commitments are, the events, the other things you mentioned in there, which you don't just go to the website and find them. You know.
Well, yeah, but the elections, important dates are,
Well, but I know you put dates to them, but the fact that there are events that are important and the fact that you have other types of activities. There was another sheet you mentioned, it was a long sheet of things. And
That was the committee assignment.
yeah. That's like, you know, your interest, if you get elected, where you'd
I'd
like
like to see the breadth of what it is.
Yeah, well, absolutely,
You can,
no problem.
just go down after the meeting again.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, any thoughts about conflict of interest, due diligence, fiduciary responsibilities, loyalty to the corporation? What makes a good board member? And if I could take that one, I'd like to talk about what makes a good board member. So this is something just to think about. First of all, you have to really love Sun City and you want to work towards making it better. And I think no one would be sitting here and taking this kind of time if you weren't that already. But once you get on the board, you have to understand that, you know, we represent everyone, not just, you know, a very vocal group that's interested in a specific activity. And you have that. I mean, you have, you know, clubs that want a certain thing, or a certain sport wants a certain thing, and you have to balance that with the whole big picture. So sometimes we don't always agree, and I can tell you that, you know, I was very passionate about certain things, and you bring it to the board and it didn't pass, and that's okay. What's not good is carrying a grudge and you know, beating a dead horse. You can't bring it up for another year, but that's okay. You know, you do your thing, you bring it up again, you know, you do your best, why it's important. And I think if there's one quality that makes a good board member, it's being a good loser. Because you're going to win some things, votes, you're going to lose some votes. But if you can take that vote and realize that you are part of a team and that we all have different opinions, the consensus moves it forward, and that's okay. And that's probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things. Any other comments, or Denny?
Let me share with you a couple experiences that I've had. I was a board member a long time ago. I made a lot of acquaintances, some good, some not so good. There's been a lot of people that have agreed with me, and there's a lot of people that have disagreed with me. It's something you just have to be aware of, and you have to be open to. And I had an interesting story here a couple, 3 weeks ago. I ran into an individual that at one of the clubs I'm a member of, and he was busy taking his, I guess it was his stepson, around Sun City, showing how nice it was. And we talked a little bit, and I said, you know, I won't use his name, but I said, we used to disagree often on how good Sun City was and how good Sun City was going. And I said, how come you're still here, first of all? And secondly, now you're taking your stepson around telling him how good the place is. And he says, he said, I've had time to reflect on that. And he says, I still think that the issues that you and I disagreed on were correct. And I said, fine. But he says, generally, Sun City is a good place to live. So I think this is where we all have to be open. We all have to understand, as Dale said, that you're not going to win everyone, you're not going to lose everyone, or every issue. But you got to be open to everyone's consideration.
And I think it's important also to remember that not only do we want to serve the people who are here now, but also look at ways to attract more people coming into Sun City. Because we know that this is the aging population, and goes with it. We want to be able to sell our homes eventually, but we also want to keep Sun City viable.
Okay, I'm going to just
Out
ask
of the room when the question was asked.
Just talking about what makes a good board member. What makes a good board member?
Yeah, I would say being willing to listen and open-mindedness, that all helps. One of the, you have to, how should I put it? Previous boards created a idea for Sun City. And the idea was that the recreation centers they're all pretty much the same in that they'll have a pool, they'll have certain clubs and that, but there would be a unique feature. And they've been working steadily to have the unique feature in each one. Up at Marinette, the pickleball has predominated. And at the Belt Center, it's the various clubs. They've got that huge complex of clubs. And at Sundial, you've got the large auditorium, and you've also got the indoor pool, the only indoor pool. And Lakeview has the corporate offices as well as several clubs. And then as you get to the Fairway Center, the indoor walking track was the unique feature there. And at Mountain View, the theater has always been the unique feature that kept Mountain View as far south as it is, but within our system. In 2006, there was some division among the people in south of Grand Avenue in, Phase 1. And there was some division among them saying that, you're always neglecting us. Everything goes up to Sundial, everything goes up to Bell. And what about us down here? And property, I don't know about you when you bought down here, but in 2000, when I bought my home, the realtors didn't want to take us south of Grand Avenue because those were the older homes. And they showed us Phase 2 and Phase 3. And it caused me to think when I was on the board. And I believe that we put special emphasis on south of Grand Avenue. And I think that that should continue because the retirees today, the young people who are retiring today, they're looking for a different type of home than what you'll find down there. And we have to sell them on the idea that they can have a real unique home down there with low maintenance. And the rec centers down there should have a variety of things for them to do. And anyway, that's my thinking on the subject.
Yeah, I think to be a good board member, you also need to make sure you don't forget about the silent majority. Because there are a lot of people out there that don't come to the board meetings and don't necessarily want to, but they do watch the videos. And they do come up to me a lot, and they are always telling us whether they approve or disapprove, of course, of what they feel like we're doing. But I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the things that we've done, because the biggest thing that I think that people are extremely pleased at is that Sun City has been run very well for the last several years, especially since our fees have not been risen, have not raised our fees in 6, 7, almost going on 7 years.
If there aren't any, and I know we're running a little long. Yes.
I wasn't going to do this because I just wanted to listen to what people had to say, but you piqued my interest, Dale, with a comment that you made, and I'm going to try and quote it, that you're elected to represent the community. And one of the arguments that I've had with board members in the last several years is that you were elected to represent the organization.
We are. We are.
Well,
okay.
Just let me finish the thought. Because it becomes problematic when the organization dwarfs the community. There's a single purpose, if you've read the articles of incorporation, which I've heard you all have. The purpose of the organization is to serve the community. That's first and foremost. In fact, if you go back to the time when Don and Denny were on the board, they included in those packets the book that you used to get, a 5-page document, I'll be happy to share it with you, on how to be a good board member. And the first item on that agenda was representing your membership. It was really well done, and it really made sense because you are elected by the membership. Once you're elected by the membership, for the organization to suddenly become more important than the community is always challenging for me when I hear that. So I'm just curious, I do want your answer. Community organization, are they one and the same? Are they different? How do you rationalize that?
That actually is a really good question. And my personal view is I think it's a very symbiotic relationship. I mean, this corporation is here to serve its members. So you can't have a corporation without the members. I think when you talk about loyalty to the corporation, what we have to be really careful about is when we make decisions, we're making decisions that are not singularly focused. We cannot just focus on lawn bowling. You cannot just, I belong to a couple clubs. People come up to me and say, well, you should talk to RCS. No, can't do it. I cannot be, because I cannot have that bias. I have to think about everyone. And there are people who live in this community who contribute to this RCSC, but aren't really active users. And that's, and that's when it comes to cost, and running things efficiently and using facts and data to make good decisions so that we're moving forward, but not going off the deep end. So, I don't know what the little bird that sits on the rhino is, but that's the kind of relationship we have. We have, you have to be, if you aren't loyal to the corporation and you don't make good fiscal and responsible decisions and you're only focused on one topic and you're running because this is your focus, you are not serving the corporation and you are not serving its members. I don't know how much clearer and I know it's tricky. I can't just say it's the corporation and only the corporation, amen, because this corporation wouldn't exist if it weren't for the members. So it's a scale, it's there. It's, yes, we have to be, and I think where people get off on a tangent is they think that if they are loyal to the corporation, well, but we want this. We want whatever it is, a new lawn bowling, since you're into lawn bowling, a new lawn bowling thing. We want this. Well, yes, but I have to make a good fiscal decision. How many do we have? How much are they used? this is a new club that's never been around and they're gonna need something and so you're juggling. But you have to think of the big picture. So I'm not forgoing members. In fact, I'm a third generation person too. And my daughter actually owns a home here, and in 10 years, she's gonna be retiring here. So I'm always selling Sun City, but you have to look at the big picture. You cannot come in so micro-focused on a detail that you lose sight of the big picture. Does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure. So I'm a lawn bowler. I've never, or very seldom in the 15 years I've stood up at meetings talking about lawn bowling. No, I understand, but my point is that because if someone has an interest, I've written volumes on pickleball. I don't play, but I know it's the #1 growing sport in America, and that if we already with 27 courts are underserved, and if we take 7 away at 20, we're even worse underserved compared to all of our competition. To Sue's point, we have to stay competitive. We have to look to the future.
Absolutely.
And so it's easy to become brain numb to what's being preached from the tower. But the people, look, I can show you an article. I'll show you a whole book from 1981 where the infighting in Sun City was spectacular over the board's direction. At one point in June of 1981, they locked the members out of the board meeting. That lasted one meeting, by the way. Didn't go over very big. And the argument was the silent majority. And the reality is, if the silent majority doesn't show up, who do you listen to? Because it's the goal, it should be the goal of this board, of everybody in this room, of everybody that lives here, that we take ownership of the process of self-governance. We were called the community that changed the nation because why? Because when we walked in this room, guys like Shorgy and Nichols and Gene and all of you guys that have come after them stood up and did this. Back in the day, they'd have 25 people running for 9 board positions. Now you gotta beg people to run. If you don't teach the history, people lose the history. And our history is the basis for our future. It truly is. Because if people don't come, then you're left to your own devices. If it suddenly becomes a management group's decision that we should go somewhere, and the board simply buys that because they want to be loyal to the corporation, is it right or is it wrong? And only history will tell that. So, Rich told me all the time, it's a symbiotic relationship. That's a great word, but until you see it in function, in practicality, it's just a word.
Well, I hope you see it in function and practicality by me sitting here, because I don't represent one sport or activity. I represent all, and I'm looking at actual data and facts, and we're trying to make decisions based on facts. There's things that, history is wonderful, and yes, we do need it. But when you're driving a car, I hope you are looking forward more than you're looking behind. So, looking at trends, looking at where the future is, and, you're going to pick pickleball out for discussion. I'm all for that. I love pickleball. There's nothing wrong with pickleball. But there was just this new pickleball indoor pavilion that was built. And it, I think that when we move forward, we have to look at what people are interested in, and there's more than just what I like, and I'm here for the winter, and then I leave. We have to look at all avenues.
That's where you're trending, yeah.
And you're trending, but yes, is pickleball going to be gone for a period of time? Yes. Are we looking at making some adjustments and putting up pickleball somewhere else? Yes. We are working on it. If the people, and I'm working very closely with the pickleball club, they're 100% behind me in what we're trying to do. So it's like, I think sometimes, and I tried to write this article about misinformation or disinformation, and it's, it only takes a couple people to get everybody worked up about something, and it's like, but behind the scenes, I'm really, really trying to solve some of these problems. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, we have a feasibility study going on right now where we're trying to look at where we can put this and make regulation courts, and that's happening. And probably, and it's my hope that by the meeting this, our board meeting this year, that we will have some answers that the board can vote on. But I can't snap my fingers and make it happen. It takes time, and just because it takes time doesn't mean that we're not interested in helping. Yes, Mike?
I'll just piggyback a little bit on what Bill was saying, but it comes down to, my view of the whole thing is we elect the board supervises or directs the RCSC of what they need to do. My opinion, and I'm not sure I see this all the time, is the board shouldn't be delving down in the details of how this place runs and a lot of stuff. But what I see a big lack of, and that's why I asked about the interaction with RCSC and the board, I think the board needs to take a more active, not the board, RCSC management needs to take a more proactive view of how do we improve what we've got, because they've got the tools, they've got the employees, they've got the access, and they need to come back to the board and say, we need to put this in to collect data. We need to do these things. It shouldn't be the board coming down and telling them, you got to do this. They should be recognizing we need security. And they should be coming back to the board and saying, this is how we envision it needs to be done.
Well,
they should be taking input. Now, I'm curious
we're
about this
off.
because...
Yes, but here's how it works. Here's how it works. We have committees made up of members who come up with ideas. Safety and security. The Safety and Security Initiative, that wasn't Dale's idea. Dale didn't represent that. That was the Long Range Planning Committee. So when you look at anything that comes forward, whether it's from the bowling committee, it's the golf, you know, IT. We're making big changes in IT. Where did that come from?
But that comes back to the board. What I'm saying is,
and it comes back to the board.
As a corporation, and this is my viewpoint, and if I were to decide to run, I would be pushing this, is RCSC needs to be tasked to take a more active role in how they can improve things and recognize it. They should have brought up the fact that there's a gap in technology. They should have recognized and brought up, rather than just go the status quo of, hey, we're doing fine, the doors are open, the lights are on, people come, nobody's complaining. The 31,000 people out there are sitting there just going, it's okay, I like living here, that's great. And I recognize you gotta represent everybody. You know, it can't be just the few trying to wag it, but what I'm saying is, and I'm concerned about personally, and that would be my reason to want to possibly run for the board, is to task RCSC. If you need more budget, come up with it. Tell us why. So the board can make an informed decision, not have the board tell them what they need to do.
Mike, we act as a board. So you can have that idea. And if you're bringing a motion up, you know, it's like, are you just dreaming this out of your head, or are you bringing it from a committee? You know, and if the committee if you're on a committee that thinks, or even if you're just doing it on your own.
I've seen a handful of committee reports come up at a board meeting. I don't see it otherwise. And I've seen some of them trying to get rejected.
But the bottom line is, the members run those committees. Yes, there's a chair and a co-chair, but those ideas and that drive comes from the committees. That comes back to us. We present it as a motion, and that's how the work gets done. So when you talk about, well, members don't have any input, oh yeah, they do. They have a lot of input. And you might have an idea like that, but if you were a board member and you went into Bill's office and said, well, I want you to do this, that's not,
no, I'm not saying that. You don't need the board members walking and telling Bill to do it, but the point is, there needs to be a philosophy back that, Bill, you need to be providing us more information on an annual basis. You need to be staying on top of things. You're the one down in the trenches running this, and you should know what you need.
I think that's
I just fix things when they're broken.
I just talked to Bill the other day, and it's like, well, but I'm living this, and I'm
Why are we
living
talking
it.
about bathrooms at the bowling alley here. If there's a smell and there's a problem, that's building maintenance, fix the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, why is that coming up at a board meeting or a board exchange?
Because
That should be a non-issue.
It was a recommendation from a committee, and those are members, and they will, their recommendation, if that committee votes on something, and it might be, we want to see the aliens flying in on Monday, you have to take that. That's, you can't, as a chairperson, say, yeah, well, I'm not doing
But
it.
why does it get to that point that they say there's a smell, there's a problem? I'm just wondering. I look at that and say, somebody's dropped a ball somewhere if they're not checking their facilities. And
Okay.
that's
Any
all.
more information?
Yes, yeah,
So,
any more
I'm
questions?
sorry, that's,
I'm feeling a little.
I think it's really important for us to understand that as administrators or board members, that to look at the whole and not be fractured into little divisions. I mean, this will be thrown at you as a board member. You will be given temptation upon temptation to be led off to some corner for some special interest group.
well, I'm not talking special interest. I'm talking about, I've seen you fight, Gail, for data collection. It's been going on for 2 years at least. Probably longer. Probably longer.
Oh, no. My first year I brought it up.
No,
My
but I'm
second year
saying,
I
but
brought it up.
I've been seeing the fight for it. It shouldn't be that difficult. It's something that, it costs dollars, it costs things, but I've never seen anything come up from management saying, if we were to try and give you what you want, here's what it's gonna cost. Yet we find out there's cash carry forward, there's other things, so it's not like we've been poor and we have to just keep raising the assessments and whatnot. There's a process here, and this is where I'm coming back, and it's a direction that I think the board needs to get to management or something in some point. You can't let these things rise to the level they come back to the board. That's what gives you the extra hours you have to do versus sitting there and getting some good proposals, getting things before they become real serious problems and making some decisions and having the information.
This is an information meeting. What you're
Okay.
saying.
But I
bring it
was
to-
asking about how
bring it
the
to
board
a
interacts
member.
with Bill Cook, and it seems right now, I didn't quite get an answer. Is Bill Cook's doors open to any board member? But I can't go into Bill Cook if I'm just a board member
Okay, but
and
this,
say, Bill, you
Mike,
need to do
Mike,
this.
you're turning this into a gripe session, and this is really about.
I'm not trying to make it a gripe.
Okay.
I'm trying to
But it's coming
understand.
across that way,
I'm
and-
trying to understand the process because I think there's a process to where, how would the board task?
My question to you, Mike, is what makes you think that Bill Cook doesn't sit down with his people? They have put together a budget. He presents it to he is the general manager, and he presents it to the board. What makes you think that they are not doing these things?
How did technology get to where it got?
Pardon?
How did technology get to where it got? How did it get uncovered? I mean, that's,
I don't understand.
I'm saying there are some blind spots, I think, in the management. And I'm not saying this in general, but I think there's some blind spots in terms of
Okay.
not
that's-
just we need to keep things
But
running
Mike,
in status
I
quo.
gotta cut you off, because
All
you're
right,
spending a
that's
lot of
fine.
time talking about past and history and.
It's fine.
You know, we're really
I'm
trying
happy.
to get answer questions for people trying to run for the board.
Well,
Mike, would you be happy to talk to somebody individually and get your questions answered?
Oh, I've tried that. I've been going around to committee meetings, I've been going to things, and I'm not even gonna bring that up. So I'm trying to find out how things really work. I'm not just sitting here showing up and, I don't wanna be just bitching about it. This is not a complaint. I see some issues, and they're high-level issues that go across a broad range, not just lawn bowling, golf, pickleball, a variety of things. And you have standing committees for some of those activities, and the rest of them all fall in a bundle. I haven't gone to the OAC or whatever it is, the committee for all the other clubs, CACOC or whatever it is.
There's more to
I'm
it.
trying to get around to these things, and there's a lot going on. And this is a big organization, there's a lot of money, there's a lot happening. And then I see certain things that I will say tend to fall into maybe some of the special interests. I don't want to be on a board if I have to deal with all that crap.
Well,
Okay?
it's-
So
it's-
that's what I'm asking.
It's good that you're concerned, but I think some of your concerns, as if you do get elected to the board, you'll find out why they are the way they are. I can only speak from my personal experience and agree that was some time ago. But at that time, we had Schneider was our director of golf. And the golfers were not happy with the condition of our golf courses. I don't think they ever have been. And he and I went to visit different golf courses around the area. And I found out to get the top golf course, to get it the way we would want it, would be $1 million. That's what the budget was for this one course that we looked at. We have how many? 8 golf courses. I told Schneider that I said I can give you $700,000, but you're not going to get $1 million. He said, well, then I will give you the best golf course I can. But that didn't make the golfers happy. But they didn't understand all the conditions, all the issues that were involved. As far as the maintenance is concerned, I'm sure that the person who is the facilities manager today goes to Bill Cook if there is a problem, if he needs something extraordinary, an air conditioner breaks down or whatever. This is a repair. It has to be taken care of. And those things are happening all the time. We had a problem back then, and I'm sure it's getting worse with our wells. Our wells were going down over 1,000 feet, and they were beginning to suck gravel from the bottom of the wells. We were burning out motors like crazy. And so that the watering cycle, which was imposed upon us at that time, we had to meet the conditions of the ADWR at that time. And it meant that we couldn't bring the courses up to the condition that our players wanted. You'll find there's more to it.
I understand what you're saying. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get into these kinds of details. I'm just saying that I am concerned with how does the board instruct RCSC management if there are things they need to do to improve?
The general manager
versus a detail. You need to fix this. You need to do that. You know,
the general manager reports to the board. The board can tell the general manager
how often
what
do
they
you
want.
meet, or how does it happen? Who meets with the general manager in a session like that?
With the general manager every week.
Versus getting a budget that he's prepared, his team's prepared. Now that the board's going to review it and question it, goes to the finance committee. I've been there. I've seen some of that. Very good stuff going on. I don't question any of that. And the involvement and the people that are involved and make their comments and do it. It's the idea of the board coming back and saying, if there's possibly a shortfall in an area, how do you give direction to say, you need to look at it. There's been a shortfall, and well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go back in details because I was more concerned with how you go about getting some of that, because they're the ones that are the paid experts, their management team. If they're shy of some expertise, how do you go about it telling Bill Cook maybe you need to hire somebody else to fill a gap?
Yes.
And we need to work it into a budget, you know, and so forth, so that, you know, because that lessons work for the board.
You have lots of good points, but we're getting way off task, and it's already at 10:30. So I'm going to wrap it up unless somebody has any pressing issues related directly with the election. And if not, I want to thank you all for coming and asking good questions. And don't forget to turn your phones back on, because I asked you to turn them, which I'm going to do because I don't myself. And thank you very much. And like I said, if any questions at all, if you'd like to go down to the office right now with Marcia and sign up for to get a packet. You're not committed. You're not committed till you turn in your signatures. And actually, you're right up till election day. You could show up, I guess. I don't know.
I do have a question for Marcia
Sure.
on signatures.
Yeah.
The biggest problem with those is it says there's a line for the printed name and the signature. you disqualify people, or have you changed it? I don't know, maybe you've changed it since I've last seen it. You have to have a printed name and then the signature above it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, or if you have it wrong, if you have only one or the other, does that disqualify people?
I think if you can read it, that's the whole purpose of it.
Okay.
It's just so that you,
As long as they're a member in good standing and they are in our system,
Okay,
and they
so
can read it.
if they make that mistake,
Yeah, it's-
they won't
it's
be
not gonna be
disqualified.
just-
Because then the member number will be there, so you'll
Right,
be able to.
and we can check it. No, it's not disqualified.
it's more, if you see some people's,
Yeah.
No, that's the
Yeah,
most
we-
common mistake
yeah.
that gets made. So.
yeah, no, that's not a problem.
Because we want to verify the member number matches the name, so as long as we can read one or the other, I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Good. Did you ask a question? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Campbell, for being here.
This is a copywritten production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.